Hey guys, how you doing? jpsarrireviews here, and welcome again to another book review. It's been a while. This is going to be the first book review of 2020, and hopefully not the last. But it's been a while, so my apologies for those that have been waiting for book reviews. But in any case, let's review one book that I personally like a lot, and definitely this is going to complete one of my collections of book reviews for the X-Men from the 90s, from the early 90s. And this is X-Men X-Cutioner Song. And of course, you can see here, this is the art of Andy Kubert and the inks of Pennington. And it's pretty cool. On the side, you can see it's Marvel X-Men X-Cutioner Song. Of course, Stryfe right there at the bottom. And here in the back, it says, hear the cry of the X-Cutioner Song. And of course, collecting Uncanny X-Men 294 to 297, X-Factor 84 to 86, X-Men 14 to 16, X-Force 16 to 18, and Stryfe's Strike File. Now, taking the dust jacket, you can see right there Scott Summers and Jean Grey, mutant heroes, leader of the Uncanny X-Men, says Cable and Stryfe, so it gives us kind of like an idea of what they are. X-Cutioner Song, this massive 12-part epic set the stage for the future of the X-Men franchise following the departure of the Image Comics creators. Here, of course, you have the creators. You have, of course, Scott Lobdell, one of the writers here, Peter David, Fabian Nicieza, who has been part of the X-Men for years, Brandon Peterson, and of course, you have Jae Lee, Andy Kubert, and Greg Capullo. This came out a few years back, so of course it still has the original, the more classic hardback. So I really like this hardbacks. They're very classic in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, I do like the new ones with the color art and everything, but I still like this for some reason. It just feels very classic. And of course right there, everything in silver, Marvel X-Men X-Cutioner Song, and of course the X-Men symbol in the back. Now, opening the book, there is a little bit of God of Loss, at least at the beginning, but fortunately, that God of Loss doesn't cover the entire book. It's just the first page. Again, you have the writers Peter David, you have Scott Lobdell, Fabian Nicieza, pencilers Greg Capullo, Andy Kubert, Jae Lee, Brandon Peterson, Larry Stroman. Inkers, you got Terry Austin, Harry Candelario, Andy Kubert, Al Milgram, Jimmy Palmiotti, Dan Panosian, and Mark Pennington. Colorers, you got Steve Vucelato, Marie Javins, Glynis Oliver, Joe Rosas, Mike Thomas, and Bram Benkata. There is an introduction in the book by Fabian Nicieza, a very interesting introduction. He talks about, the aftermath, of course, of the Image Comics creators leaving, and the people that are left behind, they have to pick up the pieces. And at the beginning, many of them, they were pretty much new to this. So, of course, he's also talking about that he can go back and redo a lot of things from this story. He would do it, but still he enjoys it. And I think that's one of the main parts or aspects of this is that, yes, it wasn't perfect, but definitely it was really a decisive factor for anything that would happen afterwards for the next decade for the X-Men and so on. So here it's an introduction to previously, like in the cartoon, it tells us everything that happened prior to this and everything that takes to this. I always loved this cover. The art is by Brandon Peterson, and although Brandon Peterson hasn't had a lot of, I would say opportunities to showcase his art, I've always enjoyed his art, particularly in the 90s. I do feel that he was a great follow-up to Jae Lee, in my opinion. Unfortunately, he didn't get a chance to produce a lot of stuff. He worked a little bit for Top Cow, then he came back to Marvel. He did some of the stuff for the Ultimate storylines, and he was also working for other companies, but he hasn't really done much. But in my opinion, at the beginning of his career, you can see that the art is a little uneven, but there are times where the art it shines in these pages, and you can see that. And he's very clear, very clean. His panel layout is good, in my opinion. Of course, it's a lot of words, but that's just part of the 90s. But it's just, I really enjoy the way he does things. I love Caliban right there. Really love his character depiction. Very good. In some instances, it might not be as clear. Perhaps the inking doesn't do justice to it. But I do love it. And look and see, like right there, Archangel right there. He does these big splashes, which are very 90s in my opinion. But the splashes are really well set up. They're not uneven or unclear, and I really like that. Sometimes his facial expressions are a bit too boxy, But make no mistake, he is pretty good. Now, this is Strowman. This is a cover by Strowman. It's fine. I wouldn't say I'm a big fan of some of his art. But the interior art here is by Jae Lee. Now, Jae Lee, I would say that I'm partial about his art. I wasn't crazy about his art back in the 90s. They call it the Gothic style. I just couldn't feel it. I just don't. It was too, I would say, Sienkiewicz for me. And I wouldn't say that I was crazy about Sienkiewicz. And I think after Sienkiewicz in the 80s, a lot of artists, they decide to kind of follow, like Brett Blevins, and there were other artists in DC and Marvel all over the place. They want to try to kind of imitate or follow and give their own twist to this kind of like Gothic, very murky design. I don't think it was that great. Now, I wouldn't say that Jae Lee is about artists. I enjoy some of his, I would say, his portrayals. I think he's a great cover artist, and definitely he does a lot of, I would say, special art. It's good for that kind of thing, for the posters, but not necessarily for the comics, in my opinion. Of course, some people are going to disagree. At times, I just didn't feel it, and sometimes it's cool. Now, you're gonna notice a lot of the stuff here. This storyline is kind of bloody. There's a lot of blood going on. But you're not going to see a lot of blood here. Of course, this is Marvel, so every bloody scene is kind of depicted in black, which is, the 90s. It's kind of dumb at the same time just to think of it. Of course, they were pushing the envelope a little bit, but that's how it is. Like, you can see Jae Lee right there. I don't know. Havoc looks kind of weird right there. Some people might like that look, the look in her face of Polaris. Just not me. I don't know. It's just not me. Although I like the way he does here, the character here. You see the depiction of his body actually is not bad, and the way he's running. But yeah, he was sometimes a bit too extreme. He was very popular. Of course, he became very popular with Namor the Submariner, working with John Byrne, and a lot of people love him. He came to work for this afterwards, and of course became more popular because, of course, this was the big crossover in 1992. And of course, then they move up to other things for Image Comics and so on and so on. So, he's been very popular now with Marvel, has done stuff with DC. Now, Alex, for example, this here the case. I'm making the point. I just don't like Wolverine teeth. What's up with that? I just don't understand why he did that. Everything seemed fine, how it can go, but if you can just make a regular mouth, the teeth are just so natural. I don't know, but people loved it. That's how it is. Mr. Sinister right there. Very cool. Now we're going into Andy Kubert, the son of Joe Kubert. And when you think about Andy Kubert, you think about the X-Men in the 90s. He, after, of course, Jim Lee left, he took over and he became very popular with the X-Men. Of course, then he left back with his brother Adam. They went to DC because he started in the 80s. By this time, he's not a newbie in the comics. He already has worked for DC as a letterer. He has done all the stuff for DC. Love all this stuff here with all the characters. Love Bishop right there. Pretty cool. I always love Bishop. And love the way Andy does the body. Definitely he is very good at it. And of course he's in the same school of his father, so he definitely follows a lot of the same traits his father had. And Zero, I always like Zero, the quiet guy, but it was cool. When you think about the 90s, you think about the craziness and the wackiness of a lot of these characters. But make no mistake, there was a lot of action, and that action was super, super great. Of course, they throw everything to this, in this case, this crossover. Of course, when the Image left, that was a big rumble. There was a lot of rumbles going on. There was a lot of stuff going on in comics during that time. So Marvel was trying to do as best as they could. So they brought their best artists or whatever they have at hand, and they really pushed to really, the fan favorites, just to push them, just to really do and bring, still keep the readers interested. Here you got this, again, this Bishop. Joe is doing fantastic work here. Love the depiction of Bishop right there. Pretty cool. Love this panel right here. Joe has a great panel layout. He has always done it over the years. Right here you can see the X-Force. Love the X-Force right there. Too bad that now, of course, the New Mutants movie, it's going to be delayed because what's happened with coronavirus. But it would be interesting that they do it right. They need to do it right. At least set up something for the X-Force in the future through Marvel. And here we go. Now this is Greg Capullo, and love Greg Capullo. Of course, Greg Capullo was an artist with X-Force. This actually made him so popular that then he went to work for Spawn with Todd McFarlane. And of course, nowadays the stuff he does with DC is amazing. I love Greg, but when I go back and look at his the beginning of his career, you can see Capullo. Already you can see those glimpses of greatness and the way he depicts his art. It's very large. He makes these large panels with a lot of action, and it's very expressive. And there's a lot of movement. And I feel that Greg, already was kind of really strengthened those muscles, artistic muscles right there. And you can see it through the characters. Look at that. Big guy just hitting Warpad. That's pretty good. I like it because it looks very graphic the way he does it. But look at all that. I love those depictions. Love right there, Colossus in the background. Great definition, great art, great pencils by Greg. There's no reason to complain about Greg. Love the way that all those lines in the background to showcase movement and people running and action. Look at this big Mr. Sinister right there. Cool. Super cool. Man. When you look at this, it's a guilty pleasure. Of course, the stories are bad. Greg Capullo, this, you see all the pouches. This is 90s stuff. A lot of people hated the pouches, but man, it looks good. The cable looks good. All the weapons and pouches and everything. It looks cool. You have to see it from the perspective of someone that is young. Stryfe looks great right there. Wolverine, classic pose. When you're at that age, all of this was so flashy, and people wanted flashy back in the day. I was a teenager, so to me, everything that was flashy was cool. And I think the characters were, flashy. The X-Men were super flashy, and that was the thing. That was the deal. And that's actually what really attracted people to read more comics. Of course, now when you go back and you're older now, I'm in my 40s. Now when I look into it and I read them, I say, what? They weren't that great, because in order for me to review these books, I always try to go back again to them and read them again, because I want people to really feel that, I'm doing justice to these characters. Now we're going back to Peterson. Man, love this depiction here of Colossus. Look how huge he is. Big, really cool. Again, Brandon Peterson, fantastic artist. Didn't get a chance to really shine a lot. Yeah, sometimes some of the panels are not so great, but and it has to do a lot with the inking. Whoever is inking this art, it's not doing as much justice to it, because his pencils are great. Coming and looking at it. They're great. Sometimes the anatomy is not that great, like this body, her legs are too big. The way she's depicted is not that great. But in some instances, it's super good, like Stryfe right there, a very classic Stryfe pose. This is the part where you know that Peterson, it was really meant for a lot of great things. But of course, sometimes in comics, it's not about just your talent, it's about luck. And we can say that a lot of the people that went into Image Comics, when you look at Todd McFarlane, yes, he was very specific, very different in his style. But I wouldn't say his style was greater than other artists. But of course, they cash in, they took the opportunity. It was a chance, and they took it. And of course, they landed in a good time, actually, because I don't think they would have been able to do it in a different time. That's just my opinion, of course. They might disagree with me, or someone might disagree with me, but look at Brandon here on this. This coming apart of Apocalypse. But man, looks great. Love this. Brandon was super good at it. But if Brandon was one of those artists that, unfortunately, because of the way things landed for him, he didn't really get a chance to shine and to grow, at least, over time, or had more exposure. Now, we go back to Jae Lee and Peter David. I would say I love Peter David's writing. Of course, Incredible Hulk, The Submariner, things that he had done over the years. In this case, Spider-Man 2099. Love all that stuff. Peter David is a great writer. And but Jae Lee, I don't know. Jae Lee was interesting. Like, for example, this again, the teeth. What's going on with the teeth? And look at, this. I don't know. It looks like a cover of Queen. Very dark, very murky. At some points, it's great. I love this, like those panels. I think Jae Lee is great for those type of single panels, just for for covers. But beyond that, I'm not so crazy about it. I like this pose right there, the cannonball right there. Pretty cool. But beyond that, there are things that I like, there are things that I dislike. And but I can see, like, again, like I was saying earlier, I think when you come to look at it from the perspective of someone that is young at that age, everything is cool. Like, for example, this Bishop looks super cool right there. Even Iceman looks super cool right there. And you look at those things like that, not necessarily because they are like great. I love this Cyclops face right there. He looks super cool right there. But yeah, you know, there are things that I like. But then we go to this Archangel, and that face looks bad. I don't know. It just doesn't look great. It goes from one good panel, like this is not bad, and then he goes to this panel. And of course, in this one, he beheaded someone. Of course, the blood is, you know, black, which is weird. But he jumps from one thing to the other. There are good things, there are bad things. Of course, you know, as a young kid, you're like, okay, this is the best thing ever. Let's go back to Andy Kubert. And as you can see, one thing you're going to notice in this book is when you start from the first pages and you move on, Andy Kubert just came into the X-Men. This is the beginning Andy Kubert for the X-Men. But as you move on, you're going to see Andy Kubert getting comfortable with the art, and he's looking better. And in some cases, it's his showcasing some poses that kind of look like Jae Lee. He takes a lot of cues from Jae Lee. So in many ways, he's the closest thing to Jae Lee. And of course, he was a great addition and also a great follow-up in this case to Jae Lee. And a lot of people love that. You know, when you think about a lot of the art that a lot of people, I notice a lot of people confuse this art with Jae Lee. A lot of people think of him, but they're actually pointing out to the things that Andy Kubert did and not Jae Lee. And so sometimes Jae Lee takes a lot of credit for what Andy Kubert did during his tenure. Look at that. Really love this. Really love, of course, you know, Bishop, the Wolverine, Cable. Of course, the size of Wolverine is accurate. Stryfe with Zero in the background. Super cool. So I would say that what I like about Andy, in this case Andy again, is the fact that his panels are clean, so they are easy to read, they're understandable. Now we're going into the extras. We're going back to Greg Capullo, as you can see right there. And Greg Capullo, he does this. I'm not, like I said many times before, I'm not a big fan of this side of the panels, the way they do it. So you have to change the reading format. Some people don't like it, particularly old timers like myself. But I would say that if there's something that Greg does well, if there's an artist that knows how to do it well, is Greg. And here you can see, see this, it's super cool. You see Apocalypse right there, and finally there is some blood there. Finally somebody had the audacity to add color to the blood, which is super cool. But then you move on. But Greg, man, was so terrific and doing these big panels. There's only 5 panels here, but they're all done well, and everything works so well with the story. And look at Apocalypse right there. He's just beat up. He's almost destroyed. But that's super, super cool. And you can see Greg is getting better as well as the book goes along. Now we are back again with Peterson. And this is one of the issues that I really enjoy Peterson. As you can see, there are times with the art is not so great. You're going to see like some things are not so good, but then you're going to see scenes like this one where Cyclops is kissing Jean Grey. That's a pretty good one. He's sitting on the throne. That's a pretty good design right there. I love the face of Beast right there. But then he has some things that are kind of ugly, like this little baby right here. That's an ugly baby. I've always get scared just to look at that baby. That's an ugly baby. But then you see stuff like this. The design is fine. The face not so much. So Peterson sometimes it changes. So this kind of gives you an idea of his art, but a lot of it has to do, of course, again, with the inker. But then you look at this face of Jean Grey. That face looks phenomenal. It looks great. So there are moments where you can see his facial expressions are much better. A big boxy, a little boxy, but they're not bad, as you can see right there. This is a boxy face, not so great. So it's it goes like a roller coaster. But Brandon, of course, was young during that time, but he does have a lot of quality in his stuff, as you can see. Now we move into the X Factor again, and of course this is part number 10. And here Jae Lee, very popular now introduction panel. Super cool. Now this issue I like Jae Lee because he does less of the kind of stuff that he's doing, the murky stuff, but he does more faces, and you can see that he's very good at the faces. You can see that face of Storm, pretty nice. You can see the face of Psylocke too, and all the characters. This is kind of like a cover from the 90s or something, from some music band or something. Kind of cool. But look at that. Here you can see he takes more time, like this one, to do more expressions, facial expressions. And here actually his art shines a lot more. It's more control. The panels are better laid out. I really like what he did here. It's cleaner. Love this one. So I would say, like, again, Jae Lee is a great artist when he does the job, when he actually takes his time with the art instead of just doing all these things that he does. What he used to do, because he doesn't do that as much as he used to. He's much better now, of course, more control, more mature as an artist. But man, he showcases his ability as an artist. I like this one. This is one that I really enjoy looking at. And Psylocke right there, beautiful eyes. He does have a nice way to do eyes. Very feminine eyes, even for male characters. But super cool. And then, of course, then goes into the more murky stuff. But there's times when things shine. I like this scene right there. I like that one. So again, you know, every artist is different. At the end of the day, it's more about personal preference. You're gonna prefer others over others, but you know, it's just the way it is. Now let's go back to part 11, almost at the end. This is Andy Kubert, and I love this this issue because Andy Kubert is at top of his game right there. Love this introduction. This should be a poster in your home if you have an X-Men collection. Look at that. Of course, Bishop, Cable, Wolverine, they all look phenomenal there, and I love this battle right there. Super, super cool. The destruction, the blood. So finally we get to see some blood. You know, Wolverine almost torn apart, but then the X-Men showed up. Super cool, super battle scene. You know, super enjoyable. I would say that I was never been crazy about Stryfe because as a villain, it's a whiny villain. It's one of those villains that sometimes you don't understand the purpose of it. But of course, it was necessary to really clarify a lot of the introduction of Cable, who Cable is, and all of that. Now, I'm not gonna tell you the whole story of Stryfe. I know sometimes people say, well, you don't talk much about the stories itself. And I try to concentrate on the stories. I would say in the art, I'm trying to concentrate on those aspects of the writing. Again, the stories aren't that great. The story is not that great. But of course, Scott Lobdell is really learning the curves and really getting better at what he's doing right there. Also, you know, Fabian Nicieza, he's just getting more comfortable. So all these writers, Peter David, they're getting comfortable. So the story, I would say, is so many parts together, and it's all battle from beginning to end. So it keeps you entertained. A little moronic at times because, you know, of course, you know, they're trying to save the life of Xavier. But, you know, of course, at the same time, they're trying to discover who Stryfe is. And they're at the beginning, they're chasing Cable. So it's a little messy all around. Greg Capullo takes the last chapter. And in my opinion, was a great decision because Greg Capullo went all out with this one. As you can see right there. I love this one right here. I love Cable right there. And, of course, again, the panels. Big panels. I love this, you know, the punch, a very Jack Kirby-esque right there. And look at that. So, but Greg, man, he was all out. You know, he was all out. That's the reason why he ended up at Spawn, because, of course, everybody thought he was super cool. And to be honest, he was. But look at that. Look at the scenes. Look at the battles. Great job by Marvel actually remastering this. Of course, this is not recolor, it's remaster. It would be nice to see all this collection recolor at some point if they ever get to do it, like they have done in the past with other collections. But I don't know, it's super, super cool. And I love this song's end. This is pretty much the epilogue to the X-Cutioner song. This is Brandon Peterson, and this is where Brandon really shines, in my opinion. This is after everything happened. This is the conclusion. This is a more calmer scenes here, but love his art, love what he's doing. Brandon is doing phenomenal. Love the way he depicts bees, as you can see. Super clean, super cool. Love that. The inker is really respecting his work, is doing better with his work. Look at that. I love this depiction of Rogue. She looks gorgeous there. And of course, you got Gambit in the back. Everything is super, super cool. I love the way he depicted Jubilee. And of course, Xavier, he's able to walk because of the cure that he got from Apocalypse. So he's able to walk for a little bit of time. So he's enjoying the walk and, you know, takes time to spend with Jubilee. So it's more personal. It talks about friendship, you know, and I really like this conclusion to the story. Super cool. And definitely the art of Peterson really shines in this one. The strike file X-Cutioner song addendum. So this is definitely a collection of everything of every character. I love this that this is included here. And Stroman does the art here on this initial page, Larry Stroman. But everything here is just characters, as you can see. And the art varies. There's so many different artists from throughout the generations. And of course, it gives you profiles of Xavier, profile of Magneto, every character, the Acolytes, as you can see, Jean Grey and Cyclops, Ascani, the one who saved, in this case, Cable as a baby, Polaris and Havoc. So you get all these characters, Holocaust, Apocalypse. So characters that are so important, the Dark Riders and the pretty much in the late 80s and the 90s, Caliban, Mr. Sinister, Beast, interesting. So you have so many different artists, but it gives you an idea who they are, what they, what are their powers, all of that. Archangel, of course, you got Psylocke, Betsy Braddock, Ileana, the sister of Colossus, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver. The twins, Bishop and Wolverine, Great and Creed. You got Forge, you got Moira McTaggart. So it's super cool of that. Trendy, Sebastian Shaw, Hellfire Club, Games Master, the Upstarts, Fabian Cortez, Gideon. So it's kind of giving you an idea. All the characters that are very popular during that time. Mutant Liberation Front, Cannonball, you have Cable, you have Stryfe. And that's it. Of course, this is at the end, just pretty much Xavier is going through all the files, everything that they have. He's going through the files of Stryfe in regards to every character. And of course, then another great thing about this one is that you get all those little trading cards that came with the poly bag with the comics back in the day. You got this as a gift. That was just to allure you to buy the comic. So you get a copy of all of that, the front and the back. And that's super cool in my opinion. Really like that. And of course, there are not many, I would say, extras, but there are some really cool extras here. And of course, explanations, stuff like that. And of course, some extra covers, which is super cool. And then you have, of course, the art of the main page. And of course, this is a different art. I love this one very much. And that's it. All right, guys, I'm going to say that I really love this book because it brings a lot of memories to me from the 90s. Andy Kubert definitely was really doing fantastic work. Greg Capullo really pushing that, really becoming very popular. Jae Lee was very popular. Brandon Peterson, of course, fantastic art. Great artist. But then, of course, you have the writers. Scott Lobdell was getting into it, becoming more familiar as a writer, becoming better as a writer. And of course, you know his career. He has done fantastic work, not only on comics, but also on television, on movies, as a book writer. You also have Fabian Nicieza. He was becoming more popular. Fabian Nicieza was all over the place. Peter David, for example, great writer too. You see these people, after the guys from Image Comics left and everything was in disarray, they have to pick up the pieces and put it all back together. And it was difficult. Many of them were very young and trying to figure out how to be, to be good at it and how to actually be at the same level of the guys that left. And I feel that they did a good job. Yes, the story is, I would say, a little janky in the sense that it's cheesy. It doesn't have a lot of, I would say, depth to it. It's all about action, but at the same time, that's what the 90s was all about, and it was entertaining. And at the end of the day, it's all about entertainment. Nowadays, a lot of books try to be so thought out. They throw a lot of things. They want to be so philosophical, but at the end of the day, comics is about entertainment. And sometimes you just want simple things, and you just want heroes all out a war with the villains, just fighting for what's right. Because at the end of the day, this is kind of like a love story. This is X-Cutioner song. It's a song story. They are trying to save their, in this case, their tutor, by all means necessary. And of course, they're all out trying to find the person responsible for it, and they're trying to find the cure. So in the end, I think that's what it's all about. It's about having fun, and this is definitely a fun book. But what is your opinion? What do you think about this book? Have you read it? If you haven't, I recommend it. If you're into X-Men stuff, if you're into 90s stuff, this is going to set the stage for a lot of things that happened afterwards in the 90s and the mid-90s, later 90s, and even into the 2000s until today. A lot of seeds were planted through the stories. Of course, this is the follow-up, I would say, that after Bishop's Crossing. So this is definitely a bridge between the Jim Lee era and, of course, the what will come next. And so it's an important book, and it's an important read for those that want to be familiar with the X-Men. And once again, I want to say thank you. Don't forget to like, to comment, and to subscribe. My friends, God bless you. I'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.